Hi everyone, Scott Weaver back again on another segment on swags. I wasn't going to do this video, but a lot of people have asked me, well, how do you actually sew the swag? So now we're going to give you a little lesson on how to take this, put it on your lining, pin it in, and sew it and press it. So here's your swag, and this is what your swag should look like with all these little pleats. If it doesn't look like this, then you're not doing something right. Just got to tell you that. We were just featured, by the way. Our company was just featured in our local newspaper, and that's me pleating a swag. And it's factory direct window treatment, so I'm gonna give myself a little pat on the back for that. Anyhow, getting back to this, the first thing you want to do is after you've cut your fabric out, and you notice my pattern goes up like this. And I always like to keep it up. Some people like to put it on a 45-degree angle on the bias. This actually has draperies to it, so I can't do it that way. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do after you cut your swag is to get a nice drapery lining. This right here is 100% cotton. That's what I prefer to use. I don't like to use a cotton poly mix. Personal preference on my part. It just presses better. And polished cotton means that one side's shiny and this side does not have the sheen on it. So what you want to do, and there's a couple of different ways you can cut your lining. You can cut it out, you cut yourself a square, one that's big enough for your swag, and you either can cut it like this, or you can turn it and cut it on the bias. So you're putting this like a diamond shape and cutting the swag on the bias, the lining on the bias. Bias lining, just like a bias swag, will form your pleats a little better, give you a little bit more of a roundness to it. However, sewing wise, it's a little bit more difficult because now this fabric's going to stretch, this lining's going to stretch out. And if you're a beginner, I recommend that you keep your lining faced just like this. So now you got your pattern down on your lining and the sheen is here. You're going to go ahead and pin this in. Now, I don't like to run my pins this way. You can if you want. It's just not how I prefer to do it. I prefer putting my pins straight up and down. I don't worry about the sewing machine catching a pin. The needle will bounce to either side of these pins if necessary. I've never had one break on me in 25 years. So, anyhow, I don't go crazy with pins. You can if you want. I get enough to hold it in place. And I'm going to put a couple up on the top here. Just to hold it in while I'm sewing it. Quite honestly, we really usually don't even do that. Now, you take your scissors and you're going to trim it the bottom. Like so. Now you're not going to cut all these out yet. Save that for later. We're going to first sew our bottom. Now I have it like this. Now all I'm going to do is cut this out just to get away, just to get some of the waste out of it. I don't need all of this, so why bother carrying it around or trying to sew around it? So all I'm going to do is leave a little bit all the way around the swag, except for the bottom. I'm leaving that nice and even. That's step number one, and we're going to go upstairs and we'll go ahead and sew it. I'll be right back. Okay, now I've got the swag here, and I'm going to use a 1/2 inch sewing allowance along the bottom of it. And this machine might look a little different from your machine because this is actually a commercial sewing machine. So we're going to go ahead and sew it down. want to make sure you keep your lining and your fabric even. Now we're going to go ahead and bring this over to the pressing board. We're going to flip it, we're going to press it, and then we're going to cut out the pleats. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I just finished sewing this along the bottom edge, and now we're going to turn it around like this, and we're going to press it. Got to make sure your bottom is pressed, and when I press it, I'm going to want to leave just a little bit of a lip on the bottom so you don't see the lining. Get my pressing board here. Doesn't have to be a big lip, just enough. And while you're there, if you got any little wrinkles in the lining, you might as well take care of it right now. Just gives you a little better job later. Okay, that's all you're going to have, just a little lip, just enough that you can see it, just enough so you don't see the lining from the front side of the sweat. Now we're going to flip it back over, and now you're going to put a pin at each pleat. Just make sure you don't cut your lining out. You follow these steps exactly. You don't cut your lining out earlier than right now. This is when you get everything pinned in, then you cut your lining out. And you can go ahead and put a pin someplace here in the center. Now you can cut out each one of these. Notice how I left this extra lining up here, and the reason why I did that to begin with is because if I trimmed it even when the swag was just pinned together, by the time I sewed that little lip on the bottom, you would have had to cut this little tiny bit off. So that's why it's important to leave enough extra lining all the way around it, so you can actually cut something off. And there you have it. It's all cut out. That's what it looks like. Front and the back side. Now leave these pins in. And I'm not gonna pleat this, but you want to leave these pins in so when you're pleating this, you're bringing it up like I've showed you in my other video. Putting your push pin here, then remove your pins afterwards. But it's important to keep the lining and the fabric together as you're pleating it. So go ahead now that you know how to line it, to sew it, and to press it, and to put the pins in, go ahead and watch my other video on how to pleat it. Thank you very much. Scott Weaver from Factory Direct Window Treatments. Catch you next time.